Welcome to the lecture on transforming requirements. We've already discussed forming requirements and covered the process of gathering requirements from stakeholders. We've looked at what good requirements look like and what different types of requirements exist, and we've discussed how they're framed in requirements documents. At the end of the forming phase, we typically have a somewhat complete yet raw version of the requirements document. Now we're going to be moving into transforming requirements. This lecture is going to cover, at a fairly high level, the tools of analysis, diagramming, and modeling that help us to transform the raw requirements into a solid set of vetted and validated requirements. So let's get started. They say, somewhat tritely, that a picture is worth 1,000 words. This saying conveys the importance of using graphical approaches to communication and cautions us against over-reliance on text. Graphics are important. Lots of people, including me and perhaps you, lots of people are highly visual and really need a picture to guide their cognition and their learning process. This is one reason, for example, that graphic novels tend to be shorter and much more quickly read than similar text-only novels. It makes sense for us, as business analysts who regularly deal in highly complex information, to want to use graphic approaches also. Nonetheless, lots of business analysts don't like diagramming and modeling, perhaps due to confusion or past bad experiences, and this puts them at a bit of a disadvantage. I'll argue that this area of transforming requirements is where the BA really provides the most value to the project. And of course, we do have the word analyst in our job titles. Earlier, I mentioned three terms that we'll be covering in detail in this lecture: analysis, diagramming, and modeling. I view them as three distinct areas personally, but we should recognize that there doesn't seem to be a defined distinction between them that is universally held in everyone's minds. Sometimes I'll call a model an analysis, and so on. In a similar way, you might see these techniques categorized slightly differently elsewhere, but the core concept stays the same regardless. I tend to think of analysis as a catch-all term for the work we're doing in this session, but I also consider it to be a small collection of methods as well, and we'll cover those in the first section. Diagramming, that's the creation of graphic illustrations to describe how things work. Modeling almost always has a visual or graphic component, but it has some other qualities that we'll cover in the section after analysis and diagramming. Don't worry too much about whether a particular technique is a type of analysis or diagram or model. Just focus on the techniques themselves, and you'll end up well equipped to transform requirements. Okay, let's start with analysis. There's a quote I just put up on the screen that I'm really fond of. Generally, all analysis gets beyond mere description and into examination and explanation. It's actually not from the world of business analysis, but rather from literary analysis. The person who said it was trying to encourage their students to not just describe what authors were saying, but really examine their statements and explain them. And this is what analysis fundamentally is. It's a careful study of something to learn about its parts, what they do, and how they are related to each other. And that's how Merriam-Webster's dictionary puts it. If this sounds like a lot of work, well, it often is. A lot of thought and consideration goes into analysis. One might wonder, hey, why bother? And that's a fair question. Why do something so time-absorbing when there are already so many demands for our time as BAs? There are two reasons I'll offer. First, we can't really say we understand the needs of our organizations and stakeholders if we don't put in the work to analyze them. Just because a stakeholder gives you a requirement doesn't mean that they stated it well or that it represents the organization's true need. Requirements have to be analyzed individually and holistically to make sure that we have the right need captured. Second, we can't know for sure that the solutions we are recommending are the right ones unless we similarly perform the requisite analysis. You might notice that analysis is therefore required for us to understand needs and to recommend the best solutions. And that goes back to the definition of business analysis. So analysis is a core part, indeed fundamental, to our work.